forces black, 8,000 people, 10%. Not one memorial outside the knowledge that I know of, that I've researched.
Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop.
And the incredible ferocity, the incredible dedication that they brought, and the battle as part of the Battle of Rhode Island. And I was reading that Marquis de Lafayette referred to it as the greatest action of the war. That battle, he'd come out, and the French really thought they knew how to run a war. Okay.
All right, welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz, and joining us on the phone now is Wayne Ibn Musa Barboza, the vice president of Parting Ways. And you can check out their website while we talk, partingways.org. They're also on Facebook and on Twitter. And you can find out all the information about Parting Ways, the organization, what they do, the site, what they're trying to preserve. But we're going to talk with Mr. Barboza now about all that. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you.
I first learned about Parting Ways through Jack Explain's column in last Sunday Standard Times, and I have to apologize for that being the first time that I've ever heard of it. Actually, as I mentioned before, growing up in Plymouth, and I went to Plymouth Public Schools in my elementary years, and I don't ever remember hearing about it from any of my teachers.
Well, that's not something surprising to me, because Parting Ways is one of the nation's biggest secrets. It connects to the founding fathers. I think you know by the little research you may have done that the people that fought in the actual war was only 3 to 5% of the people. Mm-hmm. And of that 3 to 5%, 5% were African Americans. Now, it only makes sense that during slavery time, that some of these men were fighting for the landowners and the slave owners. And when the war was over, Washington made sure that each town gave these men some land, their freedom, and provisions like any other veterans. You know, so what it boils down to, over time, it all evolved into the town owning the lands.
And is that how it would go? Even though they would kind of bequeath these land to the soldiers that fought, it was still technically the town that owned the property?
Well, actually, they waited, like they do now. They wait until the people who know the real story die off. You follow what I'm saying?
I think I see what you mean,
yeah. Yeah, they die off. If you don't write in the history books, of course, all you have to do is sit on the sidelines and wait for the people who witnesses to die off, and you got one story.
But when I'm hearing this story, you know, as I said, for the first time, it seems to me, though, that it's probably representative of something that happened in a lot of areas, in a lot of communities, where, you know, these African American soldiers, these freed slaves who defended the country, were given an honorarium, but then eventually shuffled away from the history books.
Yeah, you got it. And the only time this comes up is once a year. You know, we have the shortest month of the year. We have the Black History. And because we have icons, the founding fathers, you can't shake them any more than you can shake the office of the president, you know, get in trouble. And a lot of politics took place over the generations on how they got that land, because it ain't just Plymouth. There's Kingston's involved, and in fact, I'm in Rhode Island, and the Newport Tower has a great history tied into this Portsmouth Memorial, which is dedicated to Black patriots.
Well,
now, the whole nation doesn't need to have a memorial. It's only hidden here in Rhode Island.
I don't understand why when, you know, it's not like these men were, you know, still enslaved at the time that they served, and that they were kind of being forced to serve. I mean, these are gentlemen who did not have to do this. They enlisted to defend this country, a country that the whole reason they were here was because they were forced to be here originally. Yet they loved the idea of this country enough to fight, and I can't understand why that isn't being honored.
Well, that's the whole problem. This is what began the whole story about Parting Ways. At the time, I was busy doing activism with the youth and so forth when I first heard about it. And when they took me up there, I only had Crispus Attucks, the Boston Massacre, you know, the basic stuff. Mm-hmm. And to tell me after going to the Mia March and knowing most of the people that were organizing this big event, and none of them knew anything about this history, just blew me away. All right? So when I went out to Plymouth, here we are in the middle of the woods, and we find these graves. And there's not 4 graves, there's 5. Okay? Now, we do a little bit of research, and we find out from the library there's 4 file cabinets of virgin documents such as birth records, deeds, et cetera, that were hidden in the library by the library keeper who just resigned at that particular time. And she said there was bundles that were thrown away of African American and Native American history. There was tons of stuff thrown away. And this was the last remnants before she retired. She hung on to it. And she kept these file cabinets right in her booth, her little compartment where she worked in the library. So now I wondered, how come these archives weren't documented and, put in for public view, for research? Mm-hmm. Well, when we finally got the drawers open, because they had been closed for a long time, we looked at these things have never been touched. If you pull the paper, it's brittle. It's all handwritten documents. So, of course, that's going to lead you to dig and research more. So the more digging we did, we found out there was a specific reason why they didn't want the black founding fathers or the black veterans in the history of America's foundation, because it tied in with the slave issue. Because there would be no, it took 30 acres of hemp just to provide the rope for one ship. Now, who's picking all that hemp? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a lot of labor involved. And when you talk about the Wampanoags and the Cape Verdeans and so forth that have been living there, we're going back to 1100, not 1492 and not 1620, 1100. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this history, like the Wampanoags and the Narragansett and so forth, has been suppressed because it's talking about the people who were native to the land when these Europeans arrived. You follow?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, we basically know a little bit about it these days. But what we don't know is the occult side. There was an occult side. The burning witches and the protesters from that came here, called Protestants and Pilgrims and so on. They all had their own religious beliefs, and they were looking for freedom too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The same reason why anybody, like the Egyptians, they fighting for freedom. They're not fighting because they had to fight. You give me a gun and I'm a slave, I'm running away. These guys were fighting for freedom and the promise of some land, an opportunity. And this goes way back. So anyway, just to get back on the Parting Ways land, there was too many mysteries, too many cover-ups, and the curators of the museums and the Plymouth Plantation didn't want to bring this history out. And it took years for me to finally get to the point where the Sons of the American Revolution accepted the idea that we weren't going to give up on this story. So they collaborated with us, and they recognized it, and we're working with them now. So, long story short, once the Sons of the American Revolution recognized and gave due honors and respect to that site, they also had a ceremony which was never seen before in public at the New Bedford Whaling Museum in 2006 on Patriots Day. At that time, they reinstated W.E. Du Bois, who was one of the first African Americans in the SARS organization. They also reinstated all 5,000, an estimated 5,000 veterans who fought, so that they would be eligible to be members of SARS. Now, SARS is not just the descendants of the bloodline of these revolutionary founding fathers. They were also the bloodlines of aristocrats from Europe and England. Mm-hmm. And they were very deeply involved with the Masonics, Templars, Knights of Christ, all the way to John Dee. And this is where Cape Verdean oral history kicks in. All right. They have an oral history, which is a Portuguese African dialect called Creole. Mm-hmm. And they sing musical songs that have ancient vibration in the drums, the beats, the sounds, the cymbals, and so on. And it kept bringing back this museum that's located in Plymouth, where the articles they were shown, it kept ringing a bell to me because they were vases, the same kind of vases you see at the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were calling it Tamaran Johns that came from Caribbean area, which ain't true. You know what I mean? So when we went to the curators of the museum, the Plymouth Plantation, you name it, historical society, nobody had information, and the ones that didn't want to give it up. And we're talking about learning institutions like UMass Boston, Dartmouth, Brown University, and so on. Now, they've been holding on to these artifacts and this information and had a couple of days. Each time they have a dig, they're keeping this information and putting it aside. Because you can't do the parting ways story or the story of these black patriots without rewriting the entire history of the founding of this country, which discloses a Masonic occult founding.
So, you can kind of piece it together as to...
Now, this sounds like something that we've discussed with other people off the air. And actually, in full disclosure, I'm actually standing next to a Mason now, and Matt Moniz has been a member for a few years now, and I try to get the secrets out of him, and I can't. And I know he knows them.
Well, that's the whole thing. These days, and I'm sure you'll have to agree with me, the Masonics are anxious to get information and to bring new life and new blood into their lodges because the jig is up. They know that the history has to be recovered and rewritten, that our icons weren't, God, and, they were humans, and they had, they had another side. But most importantly, how it ties in is the denying these veterans, because this is what Parting Ways is all about, denying these veterans, these founding fathers, who evidently fought side by side with Indians, black, even women, during the Revolution, before the Revolution, and working under Washington, were given sovereignty as a citizen in this new nation. That can't be taken away. That's why the land is under the control of the Department of Interior. Okay? Now, when I got the book on the Department of Interior puts out on African information, it had nothing about the slave trade when it came to the Cape Verdean Islands. In fact, even the maps excluded the islands. It excluded the words, excluded the culture, etc. And this is the most important part. Cape Verde is where the slave trade began.
Really?
Yes. A lot of people think that the slave trade, as they call it, started when Columbus come over here and, took the land. Now they needed blacks. But it's the other way around, okay? First off, they weren't doing no trade. It was a kidnapping. And that didn't take place until after they had killed off many tribes, the Arawak, the Wampanoag, the Batuque. The Batuque especially the women were taken to Cape Verde for a hybrid experiment to create a brown-skinned hybrid of their own that they could trust so they could turn their back and let them do the labor. And they had to teach these Cape Verdeans as their own children, all right, how to navigate ships, how to control the slave products and services that they had to provide. Like anybody that got a little money, they're going to pay people to do the work. Why not get a son or a daughter? You know what I mean? So they were, even up until the 70s, Cape Verdean people actually had on their birth certificate that they were Caucasians. And they were treated entirely different from the African Americans. And they believe that, like the British African immigrants believe that they're British. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you mean.
Especially if you're Portuguese, you know the Knights Templar or the Knights of Christ from the Portuguese Castle of Timor. These were the Sinclair tribes.
Well,
are you familiar with them?
Yeah, well, I've heard of them in some of the literature that I've read on the Templars.
Well, they built the Newport Tower. In fact, this winter solace, it was a lunar eclipse that took place at 10-something the night before the Venus alignment. And some of the, in fact, I can tell you the name of the person. He's the editor of the Masonic Lodge here in East Providence. He does the paper or something. And he's the one that gave the tour to the so-called initiates, because who else would be out there that time in the morning in the freezing snow? Gave the tour to the initiates when we arrived. Now, because of my shamanistic skills, you might say, I catch these ceremonies during their alignments and astrological rituals and so forth. I've been catching them as an invited guest, and they have to accept. You ever hear the widow's son?
No.
Well, your boy's right there. Ask him if he ever heard a widow's son.
I am familiar with what you were referencing.
Well, you're being quiet, my friend.
You might be under orders to be quiet.
Well, you swear, no. I mean, there's nothing devious behind this.
No.
A cult doesn't mean bad. It just means hidden, secret, something they keep sacred to themselves. But the idea that you're keeping the labor, the sacrifices, the deeds, and all these things that were heritage for the African Americans that live here in this country today, and to look at the stats say that you have to have a 2 something to be sustainable as a race. Mm-hmm. And here we had 1.6, and they kill off 150,000 a day, at the birth control centers and planet. All this is going on in our community. Why? To keep a story quiet? To keep the history, keep these icons looking like God? All over the world, all governments. You follow where I'm coming?
No, I definitely do.
So parting ways has been suppressed because of it. Because you can't, just like the Indians, you cannot tell the true story without destroying the lying story.
Well, the mythology that they've built up.
Okay, we'll call it mythology.
But part of that, though, is, that so often when it comes to telling the true story of history, history is just told by whoever wrote the story at the time, and that's kind of why it's his story, because he's the one that wrote it, he's the one that told it, and for the mindset that they had at the time when they were recording all this information, it took 200 years after these gentlemen were given this land before even that mindset began to even remotely be wiped away.
Okay, but we're in the 21st century. The race is over. Mm-hmm. We're a human race. All right? Now, as Americans, don't you think we should revisit this little problem? We should discuss this. This should be on the table somewhere where these soldiers could be recognized.
Absolutely.
Well, what is stopping it if you don't think there's something big? If it's not a conspiracy, what is stopping congressmen, senators, and veterans organizations for 70? We're talking, I got in.
If we knew the history the way it's supposed to be told, then we wouldn't have any problems with people today, especially African American males. So I'm telling you, parting ways is so important. that nothing can take its place. It has to go into the schools. So we're offering DVDs free to kids in school. And we're hoping that you people out there with the money pay for it will buy them for the kids. Thank you very much. To the state, the two, and you know, it worked for both sides to help these fathers. First, they had to be recovered because most of them became outlaws when they couldn't afford to pay the child support. And of course, you can't get a job if you got a warrant because they know where you are and pick you up right at the job. So it was this outlaw tag that you got, and the stigma of being a deadbeat dad when you can't afford to send the money home. And if you did, you know the money wasn't going to the kid. That made it even more better. So I found out by teaching a class for Job Link up in Wood Avenue, Providence. They had a program with the child support enforcement, and they sent me 15 deadbeat dads. And I found out through that program, with the information that came from these men, how to deal with that. And we came up with Rhode Island First Fatherhood as a group. This is on a website that you can find linked to capeverdean.net. Now, the other side of the coin is that I found that all this was rooted in the history. And we wanted to know, how did we get that way? How did we end up the outlaws, broken from our families and slaves to these jobs that going nowhere and, you know, can't vote? Wanted to know how that happened. Well, we had to go back into history, and one of my friends, Eddie Johnson, told me about the founding fathers up there in Plymouth and these black revolutionary soldiers. And this is where it all really began, because when I went up there, I found a stargate, a actual geometric position on the globe where it all began. You might say the Dead Sea Scrolls. There was symbolically every thing that you could think of there. The jars from Africa, the evidence of the villages hidden in the way they had the outside look like colonial, but the way the inside of the village was actually like West African. Their graves. Ritual, ceremonial, and the people that kept the story alive were Cape Verdean American immigrants that had been living in Plymouth for hundreds of years. So anyway, I got interested in parting ways and became a founder of this new Parting Ways project, which reconstituted about the year 1972. So we backtracked, paid up all the dues, we paid off all the papers, and did everything we were supposed to do to make it legal. And now it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So not to split the two up, because they do relate to each other. And also at the same time knowing that government, state, and all these people that I've come across, and all these organizations that have all the money and power in the world, they still haven't given up one dime. You know, they haven't done one thing that actually helps these fathers regain their position in the community as fathers, and, you know, join with their children and kind of more or less help rebuild what we lost. So we're using Future Image products and services and the ideas that I've gained over the years and came in through these fathers to recover and to re-educate. And the first thing we have to learn is symbolism in the word and what it means, and how these words that we every day we walk around, we don't realize that we're being controlled through words and pictures and images. And this is what part 2 is all about. All right, so we'll cut here and we'll talk.
How you doing? My name is Antonio Ramo, my name is Fabio, and I bumped into Mr. B. He was my teacher back in 2002 at the program I was in with him. It was
A little louder.
It was a beautiful thing, you know. Basically, you know, I'm doing good right now, you know, for my kids. I got 3 kids. My youngest is 2.5. I'm working. I haven't been in jail since I've been doing good. You know, I don't got no warrants. I've been paying what I had to pay.
You remember the rules and how you got there?
The rules?
How you got to the program?
It was court support.
And what did they say you had to do?
I had to go in the program, and because I wasn't working, I was looking for employment. So basically, they ordered me to go to the program.
For how many weeks? It was 3 weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah, like a few weeks maybe.
And then if you didn't graduate, you go to jail, right?
Yeah.
But you did all right.
I did all right. I got my certificate and everything. It's at the house.
Yeah?
Yeah. I got it in my album, my photo album. Graduated from the class.
So there is a chance, because remember, everybody came in there, they didn't get a job.
No hope, right? No hope, you know.
They gave up. This is the only program they've had of this, because you haven't seen me in, what, since 2002?
Yeah, wow, 5 years back or something? Wow, yeah.
And they shut that down. You know why they shut it down? It was working.
Right.
We got 85% success rate. You know, the people that was running the program wanted us to sign over the webs in the book that we wrote. They wanted us to sign it over to them so they can get money. And I says, no, it belongs to us. Well, we still own that website. I think you like to tell some of the members, you know, the guys that ain't got a chance because they can't pay their child support, they can't find work, like me or something, you know.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, man. You know, I mean, there's work out there. It's not gonna come to you. You gotta go find it, you know. And the program give me knowledge that yes, I can do it. You know, just because I got kids and hard, it's not the end of the world. You know?
Then we have a guy come down from child support enforcement rules, and there was a lot of different activity. Most of it was from us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're the ones that fed all the data program.
Yep.
Great. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, same here, man. And you know, appreciate you too. Beautiful guy, wonderful guy, man, and you know, appreciate your help, man.
Thanks a lot, man.